We will show you what happened in the hottest parts of the front and the glorious victories of our army. Ukrainian territory turned into a hiding place for the Russian army. Russian troops were trapped in most of the Ukrainian front lines following the Wagner rebellion. The Russians are in a desperate situation in Luhansk and Donetsk in the east of Ukraine, Kharkiv in the north, Berdyansk, Tokhmak, Melitopol, Zaporizhia, and Kherson in the south. The Ukrainian armed forces specifically target Russian military facilities, command centers, and ammunition depots in these regions with effective weapon and missile systems. For about a few weeks, the Ukrainian focus has been on the Zaporizhia region. While in recent days, Kiev has focused on its plans to destroy Russian military targets on the eastern front lines. Therefore, Ukrainian forces directed their offensive axes towards Russian military installations in Donetsk and Luhansk. The Ukrainians used such effective bombs as JDAM in such offensive operations. However, the most striking detail in this regard was the detection of the underground military base established by the Russian troops on the eastern front lines by the Ukrainian and the JDAM attacks on this facility. In addition, using JDAMs, the Ukrainians managed to target not only the Russian underground military base, but also other Russian military bases in the Donetsk region. Let's go right now to the hot front lines of the Donetsk region to discover the fate of these attacks and their effects on the war. Before continuing our video, I would like to remind you again, if you are against the invasion of Ukraine and want to support our work with my team, you can like our video, comment, and hit the super thanks button below. As we mentioned, in the first target of the Ukrainian armed forces, the Russians had a secret underground military base near Donetsk. It's claimed that the military base that the Russians built underground was detected by the UAV flights of the Ukrainian army. It is estimated that this base has long served the Russians as a critical center in the Donetsk region. However, the UAV flights carried out by the Ukrainians, especially in the Donbass region, during the troubled times when Russia was dealing with rebellions, managed to determine the location of many Russian military facilities. Among these reconnaissance efforts, the Russian underground base center in Donetsk attracted the attention of the Ukrainian troops. Currently, Ukrainians like Bakhmut use underground bunker base and military command centers on critical front lines. The Russian underground military base in Donetsk has long been an important center for Moscow's invasion plans. After the strategic date of the Russian underground base was seized, the Ukrainian Marine Corps took action. Fighters of Ukraine, 35th Marine Brigade, managed to destroy the underground military headquarters of the Russian army in Donetsk with JDAM bombs from a critical range of 150 kilometers. Russian troops did not expect the stunning JDAM attack. The reason for this was that there were still a large number of Russian soldiers in the underground headquarters in Donetsk. In other words, Russia could not receive the intelligence of the JDAM attacks and suffered heavy losses as a result of these attacks. The video of the attack was published on the internet. The video showed the task of the Ukrainian defenders, the chief of staff and the commander of the mortar battery. And although the Russian headquarters were underground, this did not help hide the Russian troops from the Ukrainian defenders. As a result of JDAM attacks carried out by the Ukrainians, no matter how deep the Russians build their headquarters, the Ukrainian armed forces stated that they would find and destroy them on Ukrainian soil. The destruction of the secret Russian headquarters in Donetsk with JDAM bombs also disrupted Moscow's plans in the critical area between Donetsk and Luhansk. Because, besides Donetsk, Russian troops are currently going through difficult stages in the city of Bakhmut and on the front lines of Luhansk. The Russian headquarters in Donetsk also led the clashes in Bakhmut. In addition, the headquarters was deciding what kind of tactics the Russian forces in Luhansk region would follow. According to the course of both Donetsk and Bakhmut, If the Russians suffered heavy losses in Donetsk and Bakhmut, the support units from this underground headquarters would disperse to these areas, and the duties of these units would be determined here. In other words, by destroying the underground headquarters of the Russians in Donetsk, the Ukrainian army actually dealt a heavy blow to the Russian military structure in Bakhmut and other front lines in Donbass. On the other hand, the JDAM bombs used by the Ukrainians in this attack were also used to destroy the Russian military facilities in the Donetsk region. With the striking attack, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to destroy 2 military bases in the Donetsk region with JDAM bombs on the same day. Recently, Ukrainian forces attacked the most important Russian military bases in Donetsk. Critical Russian military bases in the Donetsk region were destroyed by 2 JDAM smart bombs. Videos of both attacks on Russian military bases in Donetsk and near this region were also posted on the internet. According to Ukrainian media reports, one of the videos showed the attack on the command and control post of the 238th Independent Rifle Battalion in the village of Novotroitsky, Donetsk region. The other video revealed that the command center of a Russian army personnel were located in the Kyivsky district of Donetsk was destroyed. There is no official information on what kind of weapons the Russians used to hit the Russian military bases in Donetsk. However, according to OSINT analysts, they clearly used JDAM-guided air bombs from the Ukrainian armed forces in these offensive operations. In the images released, JDAM Direct Attack Ordnance JDAM is a relatively inexpensive conventional bomb diversion kit manufactured by Boeing. JDAM transform existing unguided general-purpose bombs into intelligent precision-guided weapons. Basic version of JDAM can be launched at a distance in excess of 28 kilometers. The addition of wings allows the range to be increased to 70 to 80 kilometers or even 150 to 200 kilometers. So the Ukrainians may have used this military ammunition to hit the Russian facilities in Donetsk. All the features of JDAM ammunition are sufficient to be effective in such attacks. If you remember, the Ukrainians had already used JDAM bombs on the eastern front lines, including Donetsk. Kiev officials did not specify that they directly used JDAM bombs in both current attacks and past offensive operations. But videos, reports, and all the evidence of such attacks prove that Ukrainians used JDAM bombs frequently. So what stage does the destruction of Russian military headquarters and base areas by the Ukrainians in the Donetsk region point to in Kiev's offensive plans? Of course, the offensive operations of the Ukrainians are not limited to the central city of Donetsk. The Ukrainians continue to carry out effective offensive operations in other cities in the Donetsk region to ensure full control. Apart from the central city of Donetsk, Ukrainians are struggling to take control in Bakhmut, Kulikivka, Kuranivka, Batagayka, Krasnohora, and Popasna. For the moment, the sounds of missiles, guns, and bombs do not cease every second in all these cities. Considering that, especially with the arrival of summer season, the clashes become much more intense. It seems quite normal that the range of the trench wars between both sides has decreased. The Ukrainian armed forces continue to squeeze the Russians in these critical areas and clear them from these front lines. Russia had fallen behind in the city since the last Wagner revolt. The revolt ended, but for Russia, this created a great opportunity for Ukraine. As the influence of Wagner forces in Bakhmut disappeared because the Moscow administration was using the Wagner forces on the front lines in its war strategy. With the neutralization of Wagner troops in Bakhmut, who were constantly on mission at the center of the fiercest clashes, the Ukrainian troops realized that the Russian defense lines in the city were softening. Normally, Kiev continued to carry out the offensive actions through the city. Special forces of the Ukrainian army besieged the city from all sides to the north of Bakhmut. Ukraine troops in JDAM Verkhovka and Krasnohora moved in. These troops began to advance towards Bakhmut from the north. In the south of Bakhmut, activity started in Opitny and Kaliska. Ukrainian troops continued to attack Bakhmut from the city. The Ukrainian army also carried out effective artillery attacks on the eastern and western fronts. Ukrainian forces removed Russian forces from their positions on the western outskirts of Bakhmut and continued offensive operations near Khabarovka. Most recently, the Ukrainian General Staff reported that the Ukrainian forces had seized the strategic initiative in the direction of Bakhmut and are currently conducting a large offensive in the region. The main goal was clear: the Ukrainians wanted to wave their blue-yellow national flag in Bakhmut after the Russians were exhausted by the Wagner rebellion. Russian sources and media also shared statements about the situation in Bakhmut, confirming the progress of the Ukrainians in this regard. Russian male bloggers claimed that the Ukrainian forces were advancing along the East 40 Bakhmut's Lovyansk highway, Nina Zalizniak, and conducting offensive operations in the directions of Yadin and Palisovka. So what are the Russians doing about it? Ukraine Eastern Forces Group spokesman Colonel Sergei Kiribas reported that the Russians transferred an unmanned Russian Air Force regiment from the Crimea region to the direction of Bakhmut to reinforce their forces in the Bakhmut settlement. Reinforced Russian troops from Kremenna are expected to unite with the 106th Air Raid Division in Krasnohora, and these two troops are expected to join the clashes in Bakhmut. It is also estimated that the 6th Cossack Motor Regiment of the Russian Army, located in the southeast of Krasnohora, that is northeast of Bakhmut, will participate in the clashes in the Castle of the War. But the Ukrainian armed forces advancing towards the Krasnohora settlement, the number of Russian prisoners of war increased. Military experts argue that this is why the Ukrainian side wants to cut off part of the Russian groups supplied to Bakhmut northern direction after stopping the Russian troops aiming to gather in Krasnohora. The Ukrainian armed forces may change their course in the direction of Bilohorivka. Such maneuvers will likely help save Bakhmut and other settlements. Ukraine troops will cut off the Russian connection roads north of Baghdad, and Putin's forces will not outnumber them either in Krasnohora or in any critical area north of Bakhmut. If you have noticed, the Ukrainian armed forces have brought the war to such a point, especially in the last month, that Russia does not have much chance either in Bakhmut, in Donbass in general, or in Zaporizhia and other southern front lines. The world is proving that it is bigger than Russia and China. Russia's occupation of Ukraine and China's desire to dominate Taiwan continue to bring the countries of the world closer for a single purpose. One of the biggest stages of this striking international defense and joint offensive solidarity, especially under the leadership of the USA, started in Poland. These days, of course, we are talking about Defender 23, the biggest exercise of the year, in which 12,000 soldiers from the Polish army, approximately 9,000 US soldiers, 26 partner countries, and approximately 17,000 soldiers from NATO participated as part of the US plan to deploy 300,000 alliance troops to Europe. Defender 23 will also be the international stage where Poland will show off all its new military might. In addition, the assets of US and Polish F-35 fighter jets, US-made JDAM-1 Abrams tanks sent to Ukraine, and fighter jets such as the F-22 will be the favorites of these critical exercises. In short, Russian leader Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping will need to follow these military exercises to see what happens in the future. Because, as you may know, military exercises are not held against situations that will never happen or are unlikely to happen. In other words, the purpose of these exercises is necessarily based on real dangers or risk factors. Let's dive right into this year's biggest alliance military move on the Russian-Belarusian border, particularly this military exercise in which the US forces and the Polish army will display all their military power to the world, started with the hosting of Poland. The military movement is especially concentrated on the Russian Kaliningrad border of Poland and the Belarusian border. While this move is one of the alliance's biggest displays of strength, Poland is constantly upgrading its army from 150,000 to 300,000 soldiers. For this, the Polish army bought hundreds of M1A2 Abrams tanks, dozens of HIMARS and Patriots, dozens of F-35s and F-22s from the US military. In addition, Poland has equipped its army with the world's most advanced fourth-generation tank, the K2 Black Panther, made in South Korea. Defender 23, which is held for the 9th time this year, is closely coordinated with the US and Swedish military exercises. This year it is planned to determine the strategic and operational levels of conflicts, to conduct command and staff exercises, and to conduct combined and experimental exercises. With the help of simulators, countries participating in the exercises are noteworthy. It has been confirmed that Slovenian, Swedish, Lithuanian, Latvian, Turkish, French, and Estonian troops will participate in the exercises. Maneuvers with Abrams, Bradley, K9, Thunder, and Oz-Crab equipment were announced on training grounds not only in Poland but also abroad. Defender 23 maneuvers will cover many parts of the country for security reasons. Local people of Poland, where the exercise started, were asked not to publish equipment, photos, soldiers, and military equipment of the Polish armed forces and allied armies will travel on the roads of most voivodeships in Poland. If you are close to or exactly in Poland, where the exercise is starting, you may need to be especially careful when you encounter a number of military vehicles on the way. In addition, it is forbidden to enter between military vehicles traveling in columns. In fact, the parties that should pay attention to these exercises are China and Russia. While Russia, which confronted many countries of the world due to its plans to invade Ukraine, continued to take risky and dangerous moves. Such a large joint military exercise intimidated the Moscow administration, especially the Russian leader Vladimir Putin, because right now this exercise is constantly repeating. But for the first time in the world to be so united against the Russian threat, when combined with Defender 23, it creates a unique situation. Of course, the Defender 23 joint military exercise is also seen as a serious deterrent against the risks Russia poses in Ukraine, as well as the dangerous activities that China wants to create in areas such as the Indo-Pacific Sea of Japan and the North Sea. So what kind of joint preparation is Defender 23? The biggest exercise of the year, and what is the purpose of this exercise? Defender 23 is a US-led multinational joint exercise designed to create readiness and interoperability between the US and NATO allies and partners. Defender 23 consists of 3 separate but interrelated exercises. These exercises are Quick Response, Instant Response, and Saber Guarding. Each of these exercises focus on unique and challenging goals. As an example, Swift Response DES exercise participants' ability to conduct 3 separate but simultaneous joint airborne force entry operations. This phase of the exercise involves the Spanish Airborne Brigade, Brigada Paracaidistas, leading 3 nearly simultaneous airborne operations in Estonia, Greece, and Spain. In addition, Swift Response 23 has links to the U.S. Air Force exercise Astral Knight in Europe and the U.S. Navy Europe exercise Formidable Shield. Rapid Response 23 the first of three major exercises that make up NATO Deterrence and Enhanced Readiness 2023 or Dynamic Force Recruitment to Europe for Defender 23 kicks off on May 7th in the Baltic Sea and Mediterranean regions. In this phase of the exercise, in which countries such as Poland, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and the United States participate, will continue until May 20th. On the other hand, the immediate response exercise allows participating nations and individuals to overcome the complexities of rapidly building combat forces from the United States. Finally, Exercise Saber Guardian enables units to participate in unique challenges such as forward crossing and lines, contentious wet gap crossings, and joint forced entry operations began this month in 10 European countries and continued through June as part of the U.S. Army-led Exercise Defender 2023, supported in various ways by the U.S. Air Force in Europe. African Air Force Defender 23 is led by the U.S. Army, Europe and Africa and is scheduled from 2021. USAF Africa is the supporting command of the exercise. The routes that fighter jets and tanks follow within their missions are determined by USAF Africa. Sabrina Singh, Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary on the aims of the exercise, said during a briefing that this annual nearly 2-month-long exercise will focus on the strategic deployment of U.S.-based forces, the use of previously deployed Army stockpiles, and interoperability with European allies and partners. This exercise is designed to demonstrate the U.S. military's ability to rapidly deploy combat-reliable assets and equipment to reassure allies, deter those who threaten European peace, and defend the continent from aggression. The exercise also demonstrates European countries' commitment to increasing the scale, capability, and interoperability of their armies. Defender 23 will include multinational troops from more than 20 allied and partner countries. The large-scale movement of troops and equipment from the continental U.S. for this exercise includes extensive support from each of the host nations. Moreover, these preparations demonstrate the importance of allied and joint investment in European military preparedness and defense. In these exercises, the United States in particular emerges as a unifying force that improves interoperability and readiness in Europe and strengthens resolve across the alliance. The Air Force Reserve is supporting USAF Africa operations for Defender 23 in various capacities, particularly a 10C aircraft from the Reserve Wing at Whiteman AFB. This year, the AF commemorates 75 years of service by providing battle-proven airmen at once to address national security priorities around the world. Meanwhile, 10 Air Force Reserve A-10C Thunderbolt II attack aircraft assigned to the 442nd Fighter Wing at Whiteman Air Force Base are scheduled to arrive at the USAF Africa operation area in support of Defender 23. The aircraft will be deployed primarily in Spain and Greece during the exercise. The A-10 participating in this exercise is the U.S. Air Force's primary low-altitude near-air support aircraft and is the finest Air Force aircraft specifically designed for close air support to ground forces. These capabilities provide basic support to the Joint Force Ground component and will give the U.S. military flexibility in power planning in highly contested areas. We will see a lot of flexibility of the U.S. and European powers in these exercises until the end of May. Coordinating this Joint Force USAF Africa support and integration with U.S. allies and partners continually strengthens solidarity, collective determination, and ability to adapt to a dynamic warfare. In summary, while there are forces in the world such as Russia, China, and North Korea that try to create so many risk and danger factors, it is admirable that most of the world's countries, especially the United States, which is the protector of Ukraine and Taiwan, are all together. Of course, This universal unity will not be limited to problems such as Russia's invasion of Ukraine or China's support of Russia and not recognizing Taiwan's independence. This incredible international solidarity will now form the cornerstone of the new global order. For this, the USA is one of the indispensable, unifying, and promising powers. For this reason, these military alliances and organizations under the leadership of the USA are of vital importance both against the invasion of Ukraine and to prevent China from posing a new threat in the Pacific areas. The head of the Wagner Group, Prigozhin, publicly announced that they are no longer capable of sustaining such high losses and that they are going to withdraw from Bakhmut on the 10th of May. He accused the Russian Ministry of Defense and other bureaucrats of creating artificial shell shortages due to the envy towards the overshadowing success of his private military company, which makes them look bad and incompetent. This is a clear confirmation that Russian forces will not be able to symbolically establish full control over Bakhmut by the holiday on the 9th of May, which the Ukrainian High Command commanders of brigades, battalions, and just soldiers have been confidently claiming for weeks. In fact, when it comes to the movements of the front line over the last 7 days, despite absolutely brutal fights, Russian forces failed to breach Ukrainian defense as Russians reached the so-called citadel, which is the biggest residential area consisting of 10-story buildings. Russian forces would either incur massive losses by trying to storm it directly from the east, or they would incur massive losses by getting into a crossfire in trying to move around. On top of that, Ukrainians continue conducting devastating tank raids, preventing Russians from consolidating control over the approximate positions. The Ukrainian fighters published a video of how 2 tanks approached Russian positions from 2 sides and within minutes completely obliterated several buildings at once. With automatic loaders, 2 tanks can deliver 125mm high explosive shells every 3 to 5 seconds. Those who survive such a raid are usually finished by snipers who can control the whole perimeter by establishing positions in the citadel. Recently, Russians tried to advance along the western edge. But here, Ukrainians also have powerful positions. And as fighters from the 93rd Mechanized Brigade show, the overwhelming fire on Wagner's flanks can quickly hold their assault and prevent rapid and deep penetrations once the enemy is immobilized. Artillery and mortar crews help to eliminate the stationary attackers. However, the fighting is not easy. Ukrainian fighters continue to say that the biggest problem continues to be Russian artillery. After a week of futile ground assaults, Russians decided to burn everything to the ground. The footage released just several hours ago shows that the whole residential area is under the attack of incendiary munitions. On the other hand, we have already seen a lot of similar attacks on Volodar, even though some buildings catch on fire if an incendiary granule gets inside a flat. The main target of this strikes is likely Ukrainian equipment and driving between different parts of the western part of the town. Very often the vehicles are parked just next to the house under a camouflage netting. This track once again raised suspiciousness about the genuineness of Prigozhin's claims as Ukrainian fighters are constantly experiencing heavy shelling. Many don't play Prigozhin's claims and speculate that he is pursuing other interests. Some speculate that he is just trying to attract more attention to his company and gain more recruits and therefore money. Others said that he has political ambitions and wants to replace the Ministry of Defense, if not the current president. And some also say that he just failed to fulfill his promises to take Bakhmut by the 9th of May and is trying to deflect the blame and save his reputation. However, many things can be true simultaneously. First of all, after today's other video where he showed 100 fresh corpses of his soldiers and specifically named Shoigu, Asimov, and the rest of the Ministry of Defense, calling them all the bad words known to man. It is highly unlikely, just attention-seeking and marketing. No one has ever said so many bad things about those at the top and seen a happy retirement, let alone during the war. Secondly, even though Ukrainians indeed experienced heavy shelling, there are still successfully preventing Russians from advancing, exactly what Prigozhin complains about. Prigozhin wanted several times more shells, not to allow Ukrainians keep their head up so that he could make some advancements in the citadel. Thirdly, Prigozhin has been raising the alarm about the fact that Ukrainians might be preparing to conduct a massive flank attack and that he is not satisfied with the quality of the defense today. He also said that Russian bureaucrats are once again exaggerating the number of troops on the flanks in order to submit good reports, while in his experience, the flanks are barely holding. He also emphasized multiple times that in the event of a breakthrough, Wagner forces in Bakhmut would be surrounded and eliminated. And coincidentally, yesterday we discussed precisely how Ukrainians are increasing the intensity of fights in the reverse direction, relocating their tanks and possibly preparing for a large-scale offensive operation. This also fits very well into the Ukrainian narrative that is increasingly circulating information about an unspecified surprise for Russians and in particular Wagner forces. In this direction, Prigozhin has his own intelligence. He probably anticipates it as well and decided to give up Bakhmut and escape the encirclement. It looks like he planned to kill two birds with one stone, take Bakhmut and then escape. But the internal undermined his efforts by creating artificial shell shortages, which resulted in unsustainable losses and left him with two choices. He can either continue pushing with the last man and see whether they die before or after Ukrainians take Bakhmut into a pocket, or he can save the last man, get out of there before it is too late, and as a bonus, save his reputation. When it comes to such monumental news with far-reaching implications, it is extremely important to make sure that the information is not warped. In this case, I just watched the video with Andrei Prigozhin and with his speech regarding withdrawal. But if there were no video, the first thing I would do is to make sure that it was covered by at least a dozen of reputable sources. The second thing I do is to evaluate the bias of this story, because right-leaning outlets tend to amplify bad news and negative aspects of dealing with Ukraine, while left-leaning outlets tend to do the opposite.